This is the end of the era. SharePoint Server 2013 will end its life in 2023. At the same time, SharePoint Server 2016 and 2019 will end its life cycle 3 years later. If you are still using SharePoint Server technology, it is the point to start to think how to maintain them and what should be the next step to prepare yourself and do not left with the unsupported environment. Many organizations does not allow to host any operation systems that's storing organization data on the unsupported systems like SharePoint Server. Of course, this is not news for us that these platforms will be discontinued and you will need to migrate to Microsoft 365 or to SharePoint Subscription Edition to guarantee its support. In this video, I will let you know how to analyze your environment and how to prepare for possible upgrade or migration to the new version and what are additional components worth to prepare before you will move to this journey. And as always, I would like to ask you to leave the thumbs up if you will like this video, and if you want to get notifications about the new videos, please subscribe. At first step, I would like to recommend you to visit article on my blog linked in the description that describe lifecycle of SharePoint Server products. The first thing you should recognize is that lifecycle of the SharePoint 2013-16 already end the mainstream support. It means that all free support provided by Microsoft, feature and bug update service packs, and possibility to request on-demand non-security update are already gone. The only extended support still is valid for this product, which contains only security updates and paid support for these servers. Why it's important? It is the sign that this product is totally outdated legacy systems that Microsoft support only for the critical security bugs that could be implemented in there. For the SharePoint 2013, you should already notice that this April, so 2033, extended support and lifecycle of this product totally ends, and this product will be fully not supported by Microsoft anymore. From perspective of SharePoint 2016 and 2019, the support of the extended support will be provided till the middle of July 2026. It means that you have still 3 years of extended support, so supports for the security bugs, critical security updates from Microsoft, and at the same time only till the January of 2024 SharePoint 2019 will get mainstream support, so all features listed in here. These products are totally outdated and you should assume will be not supported very soon. What does it mean for you? It means that you will need to move from this platform to supported ones if your organization requires that. Moreover, if you want to continue to get security updates for these products, you will need to migrate. You can see still there's not that much time to prepare yourself to migrate to the other supported platform from SharePoint Server. And what kind of options do you have right now? First of all, you can see SharePoint 2016 and 19 are still platforms that are supported till 2026, but at the same time there is the end date of support for both platforms. In the current setup, in my opinion, if you want to move on from legacy SharePoint Server editions, you should consider two scenarios about possible migrate/upgrade from SharePoint Server. First of all, SharePoint Server Subscription Edition. There is still on-premise version of the SharePoint Server that does not have end date for its support, so you can migrate there, and at current setup your environment will be fully supported if you will upgrade your environment based on the Microsoft recommendations. And it is possible to migrate directly through database upgrade from SharePoint 2016 and from SharePoint 2019. It means that if you are on the SharePoint 2013, you will need to migrate to SharePoint 2016 and then move to the subscription edition. If you have SharePoint Server 2016 or 2019, you can directly upgrade your environment there. And this is the scenario that will help you to maintain the support from Microsoft for your SharePoint Server on-premise editions. Again, in my perspective, I would highly recommend to consider migration to the Office 365, but I know there are multiple organizations that from many legal formal requirements cannot move specific data to the cloud, or this kind of servers need to be maintained. In such cases, plan your migration to the SharePoint Server Subscription Edition. In the description of the video, you will find detailed information how to plan that kind of process. And remember, if you are on SharePoint 2013, probably you will need to do at least one upgrade to the 2016 and then to the Subscription Edition. Of course, the second scenario is upgrade or migration to the SharePoint Online. You will be able to take all of your data and move it to SharePoint Online and get rid of old SharePoint servers and get rid of all licenses, maintenance and administration of these platforms. Of course, not everything is possible to be migrated one-to-one from SharePoint on-premise and SharePoint Online, and there are some limitations about what is possible and what not. In the second part of this video, I will help you to understand and analyze your environment and build some kind of recommendation. I will also recommend you possible migration tools that you can use to upgrade or to migrate to the Office 365. In case of the migration on-premise, you are using PowerShell and SharePoint admin portal. In case of movement to the cloud, you will need to use dedicated migration tools. And now let's analyze what you really have on your SharePoint environment. I would recommend you two great tools that will help you to recognize what your SharePoint farm stored inside, which many times could be super big surprise for you. So that's why I would recommend you first to execute two tools that will analyze your SharePoint farm environment, tell you how many servers, what kind of applications do you have there, and second tool will tell you what kind of possible limitations you can face when you will plan to migrate to the cloud. And the first thing you need to address when you will plan to migrate or upgrade your SharePoint environment is to get to know what you have there. If you own SharePoint servers that are 10 years old, you can imagine that there will be some kind of surprises. That's why I want to recommend you two tools that you can download for free, and you will find the links to them in the description. First is SPS Farm Report. This is very old tool used by years, which allows you to generate how your SharePoint farm structure is built. What kind of servers do you have? What kind of applications? How many content databases? What is their size? Plus what kind of custom application WSP files you have deployed. This kind of application you can execute using PowerShell on your SharePoint farm. The only thing you need to be sure, you need to be SharePoint farm admin and have DB owner permissions on the SQL server for the SharePoint databases. There's no performance impact on the environment, so you can execute this tool whenever you want. This will be super helpful whenever you want to upgrade to SharePoint Subscription Edition or if you want to move to the SharePoint Online. The second tool I would like to recommend you is the SharePoint Migration Assessment tool. This is really powerful assessment solution that will allow you to review what kind of data do you own in your environment. You can see how many reports you have there, and you will get detailed information about everything that is not supported or problematic if you migrating to the SharePoint Online. You can download this application for free from the Microsoft site. You can execute it on your farm, but one very important information. These reports could be very huge. If your farm is terabytes of the data, prepare gigabytes of space on the hard drive, because the exported reports could be huge, plus all WSP applications will be also exported in there. Moreover, you can use this tool as a foundation for the further steps to plan what should be migrated, what should be sunset, what should be deprecated in your environment. Plus, you will see in details what is the complexity of your environment. And critical information number 2 about this tool, it could have heavy impact on the SharePoint performance. Remember, execute this tool only during maintenance windows, because for sure it will impact the way how your farm will work and time response for the end users. Perfect. So you have the tools that will allow you to tell what exactly is stored in your SharePoint environment, how many SharePoint sites, how many custom solutions, how many workflows exists on your SharePoint server. And this is very important point for you. You need to remember every organization will treat that kind of project, upgrade or migration of the SharePoint environment as a cost for the organization. And when you have clear statement about data on your SharePoint environment, now is a good point to do the cleanup. And I know this is super big challenge to convince business users to archive, sunset or delete the data that is stored on SharePoint servers for years. But I encourage you to do that kind of exercise with your business users, with your stakeholders, with your managers. SharePoint Migration Assessment tool will deliver you the information how often and what is the last change of the data on the SharePoint site. This is really great information to tell if something is used or not. And again, I will heavily encourage you to do that kind of exercise and try to shrink the scope. So to do not migrate or upgrade rubbish data that will not be valuable for anyone, because in the end you will have to pay for it. You can do it by yourself, you can ask Microsoft for help using Fast Track, or you can ask third-party vendor to help you, but in every scenario there will be some kind of cost for your organization. So invest this money for something that will have the value for the organization. Do not push rubbish data to the new platform. After the cleanup, you will get to the point that you will also need to find the tools that will allow you to migrate your data from SharePoint on-premise environment to the SharePoint Online. One of the tools you should consider is the SharePoint Migration tool and Migration Manager that also help to move some data to the cloud. SharePoint Migration Manager is a free tool that you can download from Microsoft Pages, which allows you to migrate data directly from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online. It has multiple interesting features. It allows you to migrate some SharePoint workflows to Power Automate, and also will allow you to modernize your SharePoint sites. You need to remember, when you're working with the SharePoint on-premise, all SharePoint sites are built in the huge hierarchy of the sites and subsites. In the SharePoint Online, the site structure is flat. You can connect them in the hub sites, but at the same time they are more or less flat. There's no hierarchy of the subsites. In the another videos on this channel you will also found why this approach of subsite is not recommended. And this is also something that you can take into consideration here. SharePoint Classic, which is available on the SharePoint on-premise, is not the same to the SharePoint Online, which is modern approach for the SharePoint. This tool will allow you to modernize some elements but not everything, and will allow you to migrate from SharePoint 2010, 13 and 16 to the SharePoint Online without any additional licenses or costs. In the description of the video, I will recommend you the article that goes in details about SharePoint migration tools and how it works. In many scenarios, this is the tool that will be enough for you to migrate to the SharePoint Online. But there are two cases where you should consider using something totally different than SharePoint migration tool. First of all, if you have very complex SharePoint structure, if you have very complex SharePoint on-premise environment, if you have terabytes of the data, if you have complex approach how to map source to the target, SharePoint migration tool probably will not be enough to cover that. In such a scenario, you will need to consider alternative third-party SharePoint migration tools that will allow you to move to the cloud. And the second case, you need to remember that SharePoint migration tool does not have support, or maybe active support. So what does it mean? You need to test if it works at all. So start the new migration, connect to the SharePoint on-premise site, connect to the SharePoint Online, and migrate one file. Check if this solution works at all, because if the connection will not work in any matter, you will need to search for alternative, because getting support to fix that kind of problem could be quite tricky. If you will get to the point that you have recommended migration tool chosen that will help you to move the data from SharePoint on-premise to the cloud, then it's also worth to consider unsupported scenarios on your existing environment. SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool will list them in details. Get through them, check the biggest blockers that could appear there. You will see there's a lot of scenarios that could be not supported. Many of them are not crucial for the migration or for your environment, but still there are some that could be challenging for your organization. You need to remember that if you're using SharePoint Designer workflows, this is something totally not supported in the SharePoint Online. You will need to redevelop them to the Power Platform. Same thing with InfoPath. If you have any forms that are customized by that tool, you will need to also customize them using Power Apps. Any custom code, WSP solutions will need to be redeveloped to the SharePoint framework solution that will work on the SharePoint Online environment. If you have custom code based on JavaScript on your pages, you should also expect some problems will be there. And this is good point to make a step back about limiting the cost of this project. If you will make custom, huge, not supported scenarios on your SharePoint on-premise environment, consider simplification. Consider moving them to Power Automate, maybe moving them to other out-of-the-box solutions, or deprecation of that kind of customizations. Why I'm talking about that? Because extending the cost of the project could be very difficult to be accepted by management. At the same time, redevelopment of all customizations that exist on the SharePoint on-premise could be huge challenge. And it will be always the best scenario to make it as simple as possible. Try to map existing features to the other solutions, maybe Planner, maybe To Do, maybe Power Apps, but see something that will limit additional work to make that kind of migration be possible to be done. And again, I'm listing a lot of limitations here, but remember, not every limitation could be blocker for the project. The huge elements could be a challenge, but in many cases there are workarounds or migration tools will help you to resolve them. So don't be scared. First of all, do the assessment on your environment, check what you have there, test the migration tools, select them, and then decide if you are suitable to do the step-by-step migration to move your data to the cloud, or if you need any kind of support. If you have additional questions, do not hesitate, leave the questions in the comments, and I will also include the link to our support group on Discord when you can raise that kind of questions. I'm sure that there will be the people that will also help you how to manage. We are still have some time, but still it's worth to plan ahead how to manage situation where your SharePoint environment will get to the end of its life cycle. I'm sure that I did not cover everything about that kind of migrations from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Subscription Edition or SharePoint Online. Sometimes it could be quite complex project, but I hope that these advices will give you better understanding how to prepare properly, what kind of tools you can use, what kind of challenges to expect during that kind of project. Remember, when your SharePoint farm will reach end of support, it also means that you will not get any additional security updates for your environment. If you have business critical data there, it could be a challenge for your organization. Do not hesitate, prepare yourself, check what you have there, and plan the next steps. You have a lot of options how you can manage that. And again, as I mentioned previously, if you will need any additional help, use comment section, use our Discord group. We'll be more than happy to help you in this journey. So good luck, prepare yourself to move from unsupported SharePoint on-premise environments to the cloud or to the still SharePoint on-premise subscription edition. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.